Okay, so trying to demonstrate what I talked about this past Thursday about dimensioning. Just started talking about dimensioning. First I'm going to talk about how to set up your English template and go through each of the categories when setting up a dimension style, and then I'm going to dimension this object. So I've got my layers drawing open with all my layers on it. So I'm going to go to dimension style. So first I'm going to take my standard dimension style and I'm going to modify it there's only a couple of modifications to make. And this is on the list where it talks about English template. You can either start with a fresh drawing, or either you can start with your layers drawing, and then you can skip over creating the layers and go to step 3, which talks about multi-line text. So I'm going to get out of this and do that first. Draw text, multi-line text. Then I'm going to start my MText box by left click and then drag. And right away I'm going to change this to 1/8 of an inch. You know, you can also type in 1/8 and press enter. And then I'm just going to type my name. And so this way, and click OK. This way every drawing that I open up will have that on there, and I can either erase it if I don't need it or double click on it to change it, but it'll already be the right size. So then I'm going to go to dimension style, and I'm going to go to standard, and I'm going to click on modify. And like I said, there's only a couple of changes to make in here. So first I'm going to look at lines category and click on the lines tab at the top. If you want to change any of these colors, you can change those. I usually like to change at least just one color, and I'm going to choose to change the text. But you can see that you can change the color of your dimension lines, your extension lines, and you can also change some of the other information, but I'm going to leave everything like this is. Extend beyond dim lines. This is only supposed to be 1/8 of an inch. Offset from origin is already correct. I think this must have been different in earlier versions, but that's the only thing that you can change on, that you need to change on this tab. I'm going to go through all the tabs to talk about them. Symbols and arrows. Your arrows we're going to use the default, but you can see there's some other information in here if you ever have a need to use any of that. Click on text. Now I'm going to make a change here. I want to change my text type. It needs to be 1/8 of an inch instead of 0.18, and I'm going to change one color. And this way I'll know when I start dimensioning, if I don't have green text, then I'm not using the correct dim style, or maybe I've not chosen the correct template. So you can see some things that are default. Placing the text in the center. Alignment is horizontal, and we're going to leave that. And I'm just going to click on the line, and then you can see in the picture what it's done is that it's lined up the text to be equal to the angle or the way the dimension line is drawn. So this one's drawn at an angle, this one is drawn vertical, so my text is lined up to align with the dimension line. So I'm going to change that back to horizontal because that's the default. I'm going to look at fit. The fit tab is where you probably won't mess with anything over here on the left. On the right, we've got an overall scale, and here is where we're going to make adjustments depending on our viewport scale. So if our viewport scale is 1 to 2, then you're going to make that on the overall scale of 2. We're going to leave that alone. Primary units, here's where you can change your format. Right now it's decimal. If I change it to architectural, then you can see it changes to inches or feet, inches, and fractions. But I'm going to leave it at decimal. Occasionally when you're looking at your drawing, if you only have 2 decimal places or 3, then you can make an adjustment here. Anytime you got a drop down, it means you've got choices. So if you have a particular drawing that doesn't need that many decimal places, then you can make an adjustment there because it's just going to take up more space on your drawing. Alternate units, everything is going to be grayed out so that you don't use it unless you click inside here to display those. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. In this case, we could have English and metric dimensions, and that's the way the multiplier is already set up. But I'm going to uncheck that because I don't want two dimensions. Tolerances, we'll talk about this later when we choose tolerances. Right now this one has none. So the only thing we changed was lines. We changed extend beyond dim lines, and text we changed the color and we changed the size of the text. So that's the only thing that was changed on this. Click OK and close. You also want to set up your multi-leader, so go ahead under Format, Multi-leader Style, and Modify. And the only thing we want to change here is on Content. We want to change that to 1/8 of an inch. And if you wanted to, you could change a color. Let's see, where's my text? Well, it just says by block, the text color. If I wanted it to be green, then I could actually set it to green. And close that. So we only changed one thing in our multi-leader. So now we're ready to dimension. So I'm going to use dimension linear, and I want to dimension from this hole to that one. Linear is only going to give you vertical or horizontal dimensions. So if I move my cursor over here, it gives me a vertical dimension. If I move it over here, it will give me a horizontal. As soon as I decide where I want to place that, then I left click to place it. Dimension, quick dimension is nice if not going to work in this case because we really don't have any. All of our lines have curves at the end of them, but I'm going to show you how quick dimension works. And whoops, I don't know what happened with my screen here. Dimension, quick dimension. I can pick an entity, and then I right click, and then I left click to lay it down. So it'll dimension a line. We dimension this line. It wouldn't include the curves. Dimension, align dimension. So if I wanted a dimension from this hole to this hole, and I wanted to align with the 2 points that I selected, I could use that. Dimension, aligned. Do the same thing over here. But it's going to give you a dimension that is aligned with whatever this point and that point, whatever that angle is. It's not going to give you the horizontal and vertical. Dimension, radius, and then I just pick the radius that I want to dimension, and then I can move my mouse. You see I get different variations of the radius depending on how I move my mouse. So left click to lay it down. Dimension, diameter, and pick the diameter of that hole. Notice when I use dimension radius that it put a tick mark in the center of that. Dimension angular, and I just pick 2 lines, this one and this one, and depending on where I move my mouse will determine whether I show a 37 degree in this case or 145 degree. So let's say I want to show the 37, but I don't like the way that arc or that measurement for that angle interferes with my dimension. So I can left click on my dimension and get one of my grips, and I can move it. So dimensions are, and now I really would prefer this angle maybe be on the inside like that. Dimensions are associated, and the only thing that'll change those if you explode them. Generally, you want to keep your dimensions the same. You want to keep them associated because that way, when you make a change in your dim style, then everything will change as well. Notice if I go to dimension style, and I'm just going to change a color. of my text. So see, now all my text is red. It would be the same way if I changed everything to architectural, or I changed it to 2 decimal places. Whatever I did in the modifying my dimension style would change all of my dimensions to that particular style. Dimension multiliter. So if we had something that we wanted to say, maybe about all of these fillets, I don't know. I don't believe they all are the same, but maybe you just want to say all corners are filleted as shown. So that's not a dimension or a number, but it's something that you're trying to point out about that particular part. Dimension I want to talk about update. Okay, I'm going to go to dimension style. I'm going to create a second dimension style, and my standard will be the decimal format, and I'm going to make another one. I'm going to do new, and I'm going to use a copy of standard, and I'm going to, hopefully I'll spell it right. So I'm going to make one that's going to be architectural. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change a color because I want it to look different. And then for my units, I'm going to change it to architectural and click OK. And as long as that is my current dim style, and if you want to make sure, you just click on architectural, set current, and then close. And then I could do a dimension update, and if I wanted to, I could pick my whole drawing, or I could just pick part of it that I wanted to change. Then it changed all of the decimal dimensions to architectural. Now I still have a dimension style that's decimal, so you know, if I wanted to do that, I could, but I could very easily use dimension update to change that. Modify properties. When I click on a dimension style, it will tell me right here where it says dim style, and that one says standard. There's a drop down here that shows all of mine. If I wanted to change it to architectural, I could here. I'm just going to leave that at standard. So that's what dimension update does for you. It can update your entire drawing. As soon as you get this set up like you want to, you can do File, Save As, and then you want to save this as your English template. And that way you've got all of your dimensioning formats saved. That's it.